Young intern used the car window as a mirror to adjust her bra, not knowing Millionaire CEO was inside the car, and fell madly in love with her. The sun had barely risen over the city skyline, casting a golden hue across the high-rises and glinting off glass windows. On a quiet downtown street, sleek cars lined the curb, their hoods catching the morning light. A gentle breeze rustled the trees, and the world felt calm until chaos arrived in the form of a flustered young woman in a wrinkled blouse and scuffed heels. Emma Blake raced down the sidewalk, clutching her tote bag like it contained the meaning of life. Her dark brown curls bounced wildly with every step, and her breath came in short, panicked gasps. Okay, you're fine," she muttered to herself, dodging a man with a coffee and nearly tripping over a crack in the pavement. "You're not late? Yet." She stopped abruptly in front of a towering office building. Grant and Moore Innovations, its entrance sleek and intimidating. Her heart pounded in her chest. This was it, her big shot. A final round interview for an internship she'd dreamed of for years. If she could just keep it together for the next 10 minutes. Emma glanced around for a reflective surface, something, anything, to fix herself. Her hand flew up to her chest, adjusting the clasp of her bra that had shifted uncomfortably beneath her blouse during her sprint. Her hair was a mess, her collar crooked. Then she saw it. A black luxury car, parked just to her right, gleaming, tinted, perfectly still. Emma rushed to it and leaned close, using the dark window as a makeshift mirror. "Okay," she whispered, adjusting the bra strap again and tugging it into place beneath her blouse. "Calm down. You got this. Just don't say anything stupid. Don't sweat, and whatever you do not mention your cat." She combed her fingers through her hair, fluffed the back, tilted her head side to side. Satisfied, she gave herself a firm nod of approval. And then the window rolled down. A soft mechanical whir broke the silence, and Emma's heart stopped. Behind the glass was a man, in a dark tailored suit, holding a coffee, looking right at her. She jumped back so fast she nearly stumbled into the street. The man arched one brow slightly. His voice, when it came, was calm, deep, and laced with amusement. "I think you should know," he said. "Your mirror has someone sitting behind it." Emma's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Oh my God, I am so sorry," she stammered. I didn't know. I thought it looked like... Oh no." The man, Lucas Grant, though she didn't know it yet, continued to sip his coffee, saying nothing. Emma's cheeks were now a brilliant shade of crimson. She spun on her heel and practically sprinted toward the revolving doors of the building, her bag smacking against her hip with every step. She didn't stop until she was inside the lobby, gasping for breath and mentally screaming at herself. "I just adjusted my bra in front of a stranger. A hot stranger. In a very expensive car." She ducked behind a marble column and buried her face in her hands. Unbeknownst to her, the man in the car was still watching, amused, intrigued, and very much aware that the girl who had just flailed her way into his building was about to change his life. The elevator doors slid shut with a quiet ding, and Emma leaned against the cool metal wall, trying to catch her breath. Her heart was still racing, not just from the sprint across the lobby, but from the utter embarrassment of what had just happened outside. She rubbed her temples. Get it together, Blake. This was too important. She couldn't let one mortifying moment ruin everything she'd worked for. She glanced down at the ID badge clipped to her blouse, freshly printed with her name. Emma Blake, internship candidate. Just a name. One of many. Nothing special. At least, that's how she'd felt for most of her life. Emma had grown up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, and where anyone who looked even slightly different was quickly reminded of it. She'd always been on the curvier side, with wild frizzy hair and a book permanently glued to her hand. That combination had made her an easy target throughout school. She could still hear the whispers in the hallways. Too loud, too weird, too much. Those voices had stayed with her, even as she pushed herself through college on scholarships, part-time jobs, and sheer determination. She'd majored in marketing, not just because she was good at it, but because she genuinely loved stories, the art of connection, the psychology behind what made people feel something. But even with her degree, even with glowing recommendations from professors, Emma still struggled to believe she belonged in a place like this. Grant & Moore Innovations wasn't just any company. It was one of the fastest-growing firms in the city, known for its revolutionary campaigns and bold brand strategies. Emma had followed them for years, watched interviews, read every press release, and even wrote her final thesis based on one of their viral case studies. And the CEO? Though she'd never seen him in person, Lucas Grant had become something of a myth to her, a legend in the marketing world. He rarely gave interviews, never attended flashy galas, and had zero online presence, aside from business announcements. But his leadership was known, sharp, creative, and quietly brilliant. He was said to be intense, demanding, but fair, a visionary. Emma had once read a quote attributed to him from a speech he gave at a university she could never afford to attend. "Don't market to sell, market to move people." She'd written it down, taped it to her laptop. Let it fuel her every late-night study session and underpaid internship. That's why she applied here. Why she'd put everything on the line for this one chance. To be seen, to prove, mostly to herself, that she could belong in the rooms she dreamed of. She didn't know that the man she had just practically flashed her bra to outside was that man. Didn't know that the amused, unreadable stranger in the black car was Lucas Grant himself, and she certainly didn't know that in those few chaotic seconds of adjusting her blouse and nervously talking to herself, she had made an impression that would stick with him far longer than either of them could imagine. The elevator chimed again. Emma straightened her posture, smoothed her blouse, and forced herself to breathe. This was it. Time to walk into the room like she belonged there. Even if her cheeks were still flushed pink, even if her heart was pounding in her chest. She didn't know what waited on the other side of those doors, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let anyone or her own fear define her. Not today. Not ever again. Lucas Grant had a reputation. In the business world, he was a name people didn't say lightly. Young, devastatingly brilliant, and impossibly composed, Lucas had built his empire faster than most men even defined their purpose. Every decision he made was sharp, strategic, and executed with the kind of precision that left no room for error or emotion. He was respected, admired, even feared a little. And yet, as he sat at the head of the long, glass-walled conference room, reviewing the intern intake files forwarded by HR, something strange happened. His scrolling stopped. File, Emma Blake, marketing intern. Age, 23, recent graduate. Top 3% of her class. Strong writing portfolio. Recommended by 2 senior professors. Attached was a photo, and just like that, the image from the morning before, the wild-haired girl leaning against the window of his car, fumbling with her blouse, whispering to herself in a panicked monologue, flashed vividly in his mind. Lucas blinked. No way. He clicked on the photo, enlarging it. The same eyes, the same unfiltered, anxious spark. A little more composed in the picture, but definitely her. The girl who had unknowingly adjusted her bra on the CEO's car window. Lucas leaned back in his chair, surprised at the smirk tugging at his lips. He hadn't smiled like that in a long time. It wasn't amusement exactly. It was... curiosity. He'd met hundreds of interns, thousands of employees, and none of them had made him pause like this, certainly not before ever speaking a word. He closed the file slowly, shaking his head. This was going to be interesting. Emma sat at the very end of the long, polished glass meeting table, her notebook open in front of her, pen clenched in her fingers like a lifeline. She had chosen the last seat on purpose, safe, quiet, unnoticeable. Her heart was already beating faster than it should, and the coffee she'd nervously gulped earlier wasn't helping. Around her, the main marketing team had begun to settle in. Whispers, muted laughter, the soft tapping of thumbs on phones. She caught snippets of conversation about campaigns, numbers, clients she didn't recognize. It all sounded important and overwhelming. She'd been told this meeting was a routine weekly check-in with department heads, maybe even a senior VP or two, but she wasn't prepared for him. The door opened with a soft whoosh, and something in the air shifted immediately. The atmosphere snapped from casual to alert. Chairs were adjusted, phones were tucked away, conversations died mid-sentence. Emma glanced up, and her world tilted. There he was, the man from the car. The man she had, God help her, used as a mirror. The man whose window she had leaned into, babbled in front of, and then fled like her shoes were on fire. Except now, he wasn't just a handsome stranger behind glass. He was walking into the room with effortless confidence, a navy blue suit hugging his tall frame like it was tailored by angels. A silver watch glinted on his wrist. Understated, refined, absurdly expensive. His expression was calm, unreadable. His presence sucked the air right out of the room. And then he sat, at the head of the table. Emma's stomach dropped straight into her shoes. No way. He was Lucas Grant. The Lucas Grant. The man whose marketing genius she'd admired for years, whose speeches she'd quoted in her thesis, whose career she'd quietly, obsessively followed. And now he was sitting 5 chairs away, turning pages on a folder like the room didn't feel like it was spinning. Her mind flashed with every memory, every article, every grainy photo, every award. She thought she'd imagined his face in person, but seeing him now, so close, was completely disarming. And then he looked at her, not glanced, looked directly, unmistakably. Their eyes locked for one full, suspended heartbeat, and then, impossibly, he smiled. Just a hint, a ghost of amusement, the faintest tug of one corner of his mouth. But it was real. Her breath caught. Her lungs refused to work. She yanked her gaze down to her notebook as heat flooded her cheeks. She didn't even know what page she was on. He said nothing, made no gesture, no acknowledgement beyond that single look. And yet it was enough. Emma sat frozen as the meeting began, her pen idle. The voices around her faded into white noise. All she could think was, the CEO saw me. The CEO remembered me. The CEO smiled at me. She didn't know what it meant, didn't dare imagine, didn't let her heart hope. But somewhere, buried deep under years of doubt and invisibility, something inside her stirred. Something said, maybe. Just maybe, I matter. Emma tried her best to stay invisible. After that first jarring meeting, the one where her past embarrassment collided with the staggering truth that the man behind the tinted car window was Lucas Grant, she made a silent promise to herself. No more mistakes, no more eye contact, no more unnecessary attention. She shrank into the shadows of spreadsheets, buried herself in campaign briefs, and made sure she was always early, quiet, and utterly forgettable. She figured it was the only way to survive the internship. The building buzzed with ambition, and she had seen enough office politics to know that standing out could be a double-edged sword, especially when the CEO had once seen her fixing her bra in his car window. But Lucas had other ideas. It started subtly, small things, things no one else seemed to notice. At first, Emma was assigned basic intern tasks, note-taking, filing, running down for coffees. She welcomed the routine. But one Monday afternoon, as she finished reviewing a stack of market trend data for a junior analyst, her email pinged. Subject: Executive Floor Appointment, CEO Review. Emma Blake, please report to the executive floor at 2 p.m. CEO would like a brief overview of your market analysis draft. Executive Admin. Emma stared at the screen like it might bite her. Her heart did a full somersault. The CEO wanted her report, directly. She arrived at the executive floor, trembling inside. The silence up there was different, thick, elegant, like the air was richer and the stakes were higher. She held her folder like armor as she stepped into Lucas's office. He looked up from his screen, then gestured toward the chair across from him without saying a word. "Emma," he said, as if her name tasted familiar, "I've heard your analysis stirred some interest downstairs." she blinked. I just shared a few thoughts, really. It wasn't anything special." "I read it," he said, tapping the folder she'd submitted. "It was concise, fresh, thoughtful. I like that." Her face flushed. "Thank you, sir." He didn't smile, not fully, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker, amusement, interest. She couldn't place it, but it made her heart beat like a snare drum. "Let me know when you begin developing it further," he added. "I'd like you to report your progress directly to me." She almost dropped the folder. From that moment on, the pattern continued. Lucas passed by her desk more often than coincidence could explain. He'd pause, ask about her notes, her ideas, her weekend even. At first her colleagues teased her, then they grew quiet, watchful. A few stares, a few whispers. He asked her questions in meetings, quick subtle ones that made her blink before answering, feeling the heat crawl up her neck as the entire room turned to hear what she had to say. One afternoon, in a hallway crowded with interns and staff, he dropped a pen. They both reached down. Their fingers touched. It lasted a fraction of a second, but her skin buzzed with the contact, and when she looked up, his eyes had already found hers. That week, she was carrying a precarious stack of portfolios to the main conference room when the folders slipped. Dozens of glossy pages flew across the floor like scattered leaves. Before she could bend down, he was already there. Lucas knelt without hesitation, gathering the papers with efficiency and silence. Their hands brushed again. She swallowed hard. "Thanks," she whispered. "You always carry the weight of the team?" he asked, voice low, eyes unreadable. Emma flushed, not sure if it was a compliment or a subtle warning, but he smiled faintly before standing and handing her the last folder. And then came the moment that changed everything. It was late on a Friday. The office was nearly empty. Emma had stayed behind to finish a pitch deck. As she walked toward the elevators, she passed a side room with the door ajar. Inside, she heard laughter, Rachel and Jason, two other interns, their voices low, mocking. "She's only getting attention because of that car window stunt," Rachel scoffed. "What a joke." Jason snorted. "Seriously. CEO's little charity case." Emma froze. The words sliced through her like ice water. Her cheeks flushed, not with embarrassment this time, but hurt, raw, deep hurt. She turned on her heel, ready to leave, and almost collided with someone. "Lucas!" He had heard every word. His jaw was tight, his eyes darker than usual. He didn't say anything to Emma, just walked past her, opened the meeting room door, and looked at Rachel and Jason like they were already halfway fired. "Find a better use of your time," he said evenly, "or find another company." The room fell dead silent. Rachel's face paled. Jason looked like he might throw up. They scrambled out. Lucas turned to Emma. "You okay?" She nodded, even though her throat was tight. I didn't expect that." "You didn't deserve it," he said softly. His voice had changed. This wasn't the CEO voice. This wasn't Lucas Grant, marketing prodigy and boardroom shark. This was Lucas, the man who'd seen her when she thought no one would. "You're smarter than most people here," he added, his gaze steady. "That intimidates the ones who aren't." Emma didn't know what to say, but as he walked away and she stood there, folder clutched to her chest, something in her shifted again. Her heart wasn't just confused anymore, it was beginning to hope. Emma knew she was falling for him. It started with the stolen glances, the subtle smiles, the way her heart beat faster when Lucas entered a room. But it became more than that. The late nights when he lingered to ask her about her ideas, the quiet conversations where he let her see glimpses of the man behind the title, the way he remembered her favorite tea, the way he listened when she spoke. There was something between them, she felt it, but the closer they got, the more her fear crept in, because Lucas Grant was not just anyone. He was powerful, enigmatic, desired by almost everyone in the building, and she was just an intern. It didn't help that the whispers had begun, in the break room, in the elevator, echoes of laughter and raised brows when she passed by. He's doing it again. Every year it's a new intern. She's just the latest pretty face. Emma tried to ignore it, tried to believe what she saw in his eyes mattered more than what others said, until one afternoon she walked into the restroom and heard her name. "Emma Blake," someone was saying. "Rachel again. She thinks she's special, but everyone knows Lucas has a type. Intern, wide eyes, short term, he'll get bored." Laughter. And a voice that cut through her chest. "She's just another game to him." Emma stood frozen in the stall, breath shallow, her heart breaking silently. It didn't matter if the rumors were true or not. They were enough to make her question everything. That night, she didn't stay late. She avoided the executive floor. She ignored his emails. Not rudely, but enough to be noticed. The next day, Lucas noticed. She didn't smile when she passed him in the hallway. She sat farther from him in meetings. She no longer lingered after presenting her ideas. By Friday, Lucas had enough. He cornered her in the hallway after the weekly review. "Emma," he said, not unkindly, "are we okay?" She looked up at him, eyes guarded. "We're fine, Mr. Grant." He studied her. "You haven't been fine all week." Emma pressed her lips together, then forced a smile. "I'm just focusing on work." He didn't let it go. What changed? There was a long pause. Then her voice, quiet but resolute. "I heard what people say about you," she said. "About interns." Lucas blinked. "You believe them?" "I don't know what to believe," she admitted. "But I don't want to be part of some cycle." He took a breath. "Emma, you're not." "I don't want to be a game, Lucas." Her voice cracked. "Not for anyone." That stopped him. The use of his first name, the hurt in her voice. He opened his mouth, then closed it. She stepped back before he could say more. "I need space," she said. "Please." She walked away, her shoulders tense, her pace quick. Lucas stood in the hallway, the noise of the office fading around him. For the first time in a long time, he didn't know what to say. He had never cared about rumors, never explained himself to anyone. But this wasn't just anyone. This was Emma. And for the first time, he realized something deeper. She wasn't like the others. She never had been. She hadn't flirted her way into his orbit. She hadn't tried to impress him. She had shown up with honesty, with ideas, with a kind of fire that made him want to be better. And now he'd pushed her away, without ever meaning to. Lucas walked slowly back to his office, Emma's words echoing in his mind. "I don't want to be a game." And the truth struck him harder than he expected. Neither did he. The city outside his penthouse window glittered in silence, 1,000 lights reflecting off glass towers like stars caught in concrete. Lucas stood alone, one hand in his pocket, the other cradling a glass of untouched scotch. The ice had melted long ago, but he hadn't noticed. He rarely came home before midnight. Work was easier than silence, but tonight silence was all he had, and the echo of Emma's voice in his head, "I don't want to be a game." He hadn't meant to hurt her. In fact, she was the only thing in years that had made him feel anything real. But her words had struck deep, not because they were unfair, but because they were true. He'd been closed off for too long. His mind wandered, unwillingly, to the woman who had made him that way. Sophie, his first love, his biggest mistake. Years ago, when he was still building the company from scratch, Sophie had been there. She was brilliant, magnetic, and made him feel like he could conquer the world with her by his side. They had built everything together. Dreams, campaigns, the foundation of what became Grant and More. Until the day he discovered she had sold confidential client strategies to a rival firm. It wasn't just betrayal, it was calculated, cold. He had trusted her with everything, his company, his heart, his future, and she had cashed it all in for personal gain. The scandal nearly broke the company. It definitely broke Lucas. Since then, he hadn't let anyone close. Dating had become a checklist of appearances and arm candy dynamics. He kept it shallow by design, fun but forgettable, always with an exit plan. He didn't believe in real anymore until Emma Blake walked into his life. Not with flirtation, not with ambition or manipulation, just with kindness, with messy hair and real ideas and a vulnerability he hadn't seen in years. She had no idea who he was the day she leaned against his car window, and somehow that made him feel more human than any boardroom ever could. Now she thought he saw her as a game, and that thought gutted him. 2 nights later, Lucas stood at the company rooftop garden, where very few employees ever went. It was late, the city was quiet, and Emma was there, alone, seated on the edge of a stone bench, staring out at the skyline. He had found out she often came here after hours to think. He approached slowly. "Do you mind if I sit?" he asked softly. Emma turned, startled, but didn't protest. "Sure." They sat in silence for a while. The wind moved her hair gently, and she hugged her sweater closer. "I owe you an explanation," Lucas said at last. "You don't," Emma replied, not looking at him. "It's not my business." "It is," he said quietly, "because you're not just another intern, and I don't want to keep pretending like you are." Emma's fingers tightened around her sleeves. Lucas looked at the skyline. "Years ago, I trusted someone I loved. She betrayed me in every way. After that, I told myself I'd never open up again, that love wasn't real, that feelings were distractions." Emma glanced at him, surprised by the rawness in his voice. "But then you showed up," he continued, "clumsy and honest and real. You didn't want anything from me, and somehow that scared me more than anything else ever had." He turned to her now. "You've seen through things I didn't even know I was hiding, and even after hearing rumors, after all the noise, you still showed up, still did your work, still looked me in the eye." Emma swallowed, eyes shining in the dim light. "I don't know what this is," Lucas said, "but I know one thing." He leaned in slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You make me want to believe again. In something real." Emma held his gaze, and for the first time she saw not the CEO, not the powerful man in the tailored suit, but the human being beneath the armor, wounded, afraid, but finally opening his heart. The sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 27th floor, casting a golden glow over the open office. Emma sat at her desk, her inbox open, but her thoughts far away. On her screen, 2 emails glowed in bold. Subject: offer of full-time position, Grant and Moore. Subject: strategic marketing analyst role, Edge & Co. Her heart thudded. After months of giving everything she had, late nights, early mornings, and a roller coaster of emotions, she'd finally made it. HR had officially offered her a full-time position, a dream job, working for one of the most respected marketing firms in the country. But then came Edge & Co., a rising, innovative agency in San Francisco that had seen her project pitch online and offered her a lucrative contract, almost double what Grant and Moore could provide. She felt like she should be celebrating, but her chest was tight, her mind conflicted. It wasn't just about jobs anymore. It was about Lucas. They hadn't defined anything, not yet. After the night on the rooftop, things between them had softened, more real, more tentative. He'd given her space, but his presence lingered in every hallway glance, every quiet smile. There was a magnetism between them that neither dared name, but both felt deeply. And now she was standing at the edge of something she didn't know how to navigate. That afternoon, Lucas called her to his office. He was calm, composed as always, but his eyes held something quieter, something more vulnerable. "I heard about the offer," he said, gesturing for her to sit. Emma nodded, clutching the folder in her lap. "It came in last night." He didn't ask what she would choose, didn't try to sell her on staying. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and looked at her like a man weighing every word. "I won't ask you to stay," he said, "because I don't want you here because of me." Emma blinked, surprised by the bluntness of it. "I've spent a long time building this company by keeping things simple. But you," he exhaled, "you've made simple complicated, in a good way, and I care about you too much to make this about control or convenience." Her breath hitched. "I don't keep people with promises," he continued. "I just hope you'll stay because your heart tells you this is where it belongs." She didn't answer right away. When she left his office, the city outside felt louder, sharper. 2 offers, 2 paths, One offered security, the other, something she couldn't explain. Emma sat in her tiny apartment that night, staring at her laptop. Edge & Co. had money, prestige, a chance to start fresh without whispers or rumors. But Grant and Moore had something she couldn't ignore. It had her growth, her voice, and him. But could she risk it? Could she stay in the same place where she had once felt so humiliated, so small, just because it had also become the place where she felt most seen? She closed the laptop without replying. Instead, she stared out the window, the city lights twinkling like stars caught between decisions. Her future hung in the balance, not between companies, but between fear and love. The lobby of Grant & Moore buzzed with its usual rhythm, heels clicking against marble, printers humming, voices rising and falling over team huddles. But for Emma, everything moved in slow motion. It was her last day. She had made the decision the night before, after hours of staring at her ceiling, weighing everything. Logic said, go. Her heart had remained silent, until it whispered something she couldn't ignore. She needed a clean slate, a new city, a version of herself that wasn't shaped by rumors, embarrassment, or complicated feelings for a man she could never quite define. She cleared her desk in silence, exchanging hugs and polite goodbyes. No one said much, but there was a weight in the air. People had heard. People always did. When the elevator reached the ground floor, Emma stepped out, her box of things in hand, coat over her arm. The crisp afternoon air greeted her as she exited the building, sunlight softening the edges of the city. She paused on the sidewalk just as a sleek black car pulled into the curb. That car. Her heart clenched. She hadn't seen it in weeks, hadn't allowed herself to even look for it, but there it was, gleaming, still, like it had been waiting for her. Her lips curled into a sad smile. Out of instinct more than vanity, Emma stepped closer to the window. She set her box down, leaned in, and checked her reflection. Her curls had unraveled slightly in the breeze. She fussed with them, just like she had that first mortifying morning, before she even knew who was behind the glass. She whispered under her breath, "Let this be the last stupid thing I do today." Then, whirr, whirr, the window rolled down. Emma froze. And there he was, Lucas. His expression was calm, but his eyes, those quiet, stormy eyes, shone with something deeper, something he hadn't hidden this time. "Hi," he said softly. She blinked, trying to breathe. "I wasn't expecting—" "I know," he said. "That's kind of my thing." There was a beat of silence, then he smiled, gently, honestly. This time, he said, "I lowered the window to ask for something." Emma's lips parted. "A chance," he added, "to start over. But the real way, no titles, no rumors, just you and me." And the truth. Her eyes stung instantly. Lucas stepped out of the car, walked around, and stood in front of her. For the first time, he looked uncertain, hopeful but afraid. "I've done a lot of things right in business," he said, "but when it comes to you, I've hesitated too long." Emma wiped at her eyes, laughing through the tears. "God, you're lucky I'm a sucker for dramatic timing," he chuckled. "Is that a yes?" She didn't answer. She stepped forward and let her forehead rest against his chest, and in that moment all the noise, of fear, of doubt, of expectations, finally quieted. Lucas wrapped his arms around her, pressing a soft, reverent kiss to her forehead. "I fell in love with you," he whispered, "before I even knew your name, when you thought you were invisible, when you were just a girl talking to her reflection, and you've had my heart ever since." Emma looked up, tears still shining, but her smile unshaken. "Then let's stop hiding." He reached down and took her hand, their fingers lacing together. Together, they walked down the sidewalk, past the building that had brought them together, past the stairs and whispers, into the golden haze of a late afternoon. Wind tugged at Emma's curls, and for once, she didn't fix them, because she didn't need to anymore. What started as a window and a blush had become something neither of them expected. A beginning. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks or grand gestures. It shows up in the most unexpected moments. like a girl adjusting her hair in a car window, not knowing that someone inside was watching and falling. This isn't just a story about embarrassment turning into magic. It's about being seen, even when you don't think you're worth noticing. It's about second chances, real connection, and the kind of love that doesn't play games. It heals. If this story touched your heart, made you smile, or reminded you to believe in unexpected beginnings, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories, where every tale is made to move you, lift you, and remind you that love is always closer than you think. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep your heart open and your soul stirred.